Okay, Kevin St. Clair, Dr. Kevin St. Clair, I might add, from the great state of Arkansas. So glad to have you with us up a creek with Neil. And you're in Arkansas, and I'm here in Central Oregon. So good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and I so appreciate you inviting me to participate, Neil. I feel honored.
Well, it's great to have you. We've had a lot of fun down south at our home away from home or outdoor resorts in Palm Springs, and we've had a chance to meet, and both you and your lovely wife. But just as fun as anything, we've had a lot of fun just together and in social discussions and what have you. So I look forward to this time. But you're quite a hiker, and as you know, my wife is too. And I think you're probably one of my wife's favorite hiking partners, and I'm say good for you. Glad you could keep up. So
Well, that's the thing. It's a
it's
challenge
great.
to keep up with Susan. It's very much a challenge, but but I like a challenge, so I was up for it.
Oh, that's
But
great.
she
Well, as
she
we're
she
recording this, this is November 26th, or excuse me, this is September 26th, and my wife is actually in Spain right now doing the El Camino Trail. I've had a chance to interview her prior to the hike, but I really want to talk about you and what how you've engaged not only in medicine and how medicine has been a big part of your life, but now as you're retiring into a new phase of your journey in life, if you will, you've had some pretty remarkable hikes yourself, the Appalachian Trail, and then your various segments of the Pacific Crest Trail. So, with that, I guess I would like to start there and really kind of focus on the Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail is such a big trail and has such an impact on those that do hike that trail. So, how did it affect you? When you took the Appalachian Trail? Was it what you expected?
it was exhausting. I will sum it up as that. No, it's a challenge, Neil, and as you know, any sort of endurance sport is challenging both physically but also mentally, especially in on the Appalachian Trail because you're wet a lot of the time. It's cold a lot of the time, so it does challenge you mentally, but it also gives you this sort of sense of accomplishment if you I don't know if you reach a goal for a day or whatever. It's something I would describe as classic type two fun. I mean, while you're there, you're in the moment. Um, on the Appalachian Trail, though, the views are really few and far between. It's called the Green Tunnel for a reason because so much of the trail is under tree canopy, and
Interesting.
so it can get a little monotonous in terms of not having views. Not that the forest isn't lovely, but you do have to look down on the Appalachian Trail constantly because it's roots and it's rocks and it's often wet. So it's hazardous if you glance up for more than a moment because of the risk of tripping and falling. But it was something that was kind of in the back of my mind. I kind of cut my teeth backpacking here in Arkansas because we've got a couple of longish trails. One's 223 miles called the Washita Trail, and others the Ozark Highlands Trail, which is 165 miles. So I started doing those just an overnight or 2 or 3 nights on those trails and really enjoyed them. And then a friend of mine who lives in Florida now, but was a neighbor of mine for a time here in Fayetteville, is actually the one who suggested doing the Appalachian Trail. Um, so I had some backpacking experience, but it was limited to a few days at a time. And so taking on a long distance trail like the Appalachian Trail or the Continental Divide Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, I think it takes a lot more preparation and forethought than just a night or two out. But if
Did you
anybody's
take it in
interested in,
various segments, or did you do it one contiguous motion?
yes, I did it. My wife, bless her heart, was very kind because we did it in segments because I was still working, of course. So I did it in over 10 years. We did 2 weeks a year for 10 years, which, that's a big chunk of your vacation, right? That's time away from work without your significant others. So she was very kind and understanding, and so was my hiking buddy's other half, to let us take that much of our vacation time and hike. So I'm forever grateful for that, for her
Did you
letting
go
me
with by
take that much
yourself
time.
or with someone?
On the Appalachian Trail, I went with a hiking buddy. And he was a former neighbor, moved to Florida. So he was actually living in Florida the whole 10 years we did the Appalachian Trail. But all the rest of the trails, like the trails in Arkansas and so far on the Pacific Crest Trail, I've hiked those all by myself, which is fine too. I really enjoy hiking with others. I enjoy hiking by myself. So I like both scenarios.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
Hiking by yourself, though, does give you some freedom in terms of, um, what time you start in the morning. If you want to take a break, are you going to dwindle a while or dawdle a while longer at the water source and take a rest or whatever? It gives you a little bit of that freedom. On the other hand, uh, just being in your own head for hours and hours at a time, especially in my head, gets a little tedious.
Well,
I'm pretty boring company.
what on earth compelled you to do it in the first place? I mean, that's a major to just set out and say, okay, we're going to do the Appalachian Trail because 20 miles.
The Appalachian Trail is about 2,200 miles.
Wow.
Goes through 13 states, runs from Georgia to north central Maine. But and I've always enjoyed endurance sports. I've always liked to run long distance. I like to cycle distance. I used to do triathlons, not the big ones, the smaller ones. So I've always enjoyed that physical challenge of endurance exercise, but I also love being outside. So when I grew up on the Gulf Coast of Texas, where there was really no hiking opportunities whatsoever. And the biggest elevation was a highway overpass. It's flat as a pancake there on the southeast coast of Texas. So we moved to Arkansas. It was very novel to have mountains. So I just fell in love with hiking in general and then backpacking specifically once we moved to Arkansas. So it kind of wedded those two interests of mine of endurance exercise plus just being outside in nature. To me, it just fit the bill perfectly.
Well, obviously you were training beforehand to physically, but how much of the hike is physical and how much is mental, would you say?
That's a really good question, Neil. And I'd have to say about 50-50, because you do have to be in shape, especially if you section hiked it like we did, 2 weeks at a time, because it takes you 2 or 3 weeks for people to through hike, and a through hike means you hike the entire thing at one go, which for most people takes about 5 or 6 months if you hike it at one time. And you get your trail legs, it's called, after usually 2, 3, 4 weeks. But if you're section hiking or doing it in sections, you kind of have to maintain a level of fitness in
Sure.
order not to just be miserable while you're hiking. So, yeah, just maintaining a certain level of fitness is important if you're section hiking. If you're through hiking, that'll get you in shape. Most people through hiking, the vast majority are in their 20s, between high school and college or between college and a job. Because of course, at that point in our lives, we don't have the obligations that we do later, children and
Sure.
careers and things. And then there are also some older folks, not mentioning any names, but like you and I say, but it's a pretty small percentage, relatively speaking.
Yes, I mean it is. Now, how long would you do on a segment, a 2 week segment?
We go, well, it depends on the terrain, Neil,
Sure,
but the Appalachian Trail, the southern states are um, less difficult, and the northernmost states like New Hampshire and Maine, I think, are the most difficult. There's a lot of hand over foot scrambling actually in Maine
okay.
in particular, but also New Hampshire. Um, so if you're walking at a decent pace, if you're say in Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, you can walk at about 2 miles an hour for the whole day. So that includes your
Gotcha.
lunch break, if you stop to take a short break, whatever. And we would walk generally about 10 or hours a day. So in the southern states, we could get about 20 miles a day in. In New Hampshire and Maine, a good day, 10, 11-hour day was about 10 miles, just much more difficult terrain. Plus, they don't really do switchbacks as much on the Appalachian Trail.
Sure,
The
sure.
Pacific Crest Trail, by contrast, is graded because it was originally made for horseback use, also for equestrian use. So it's graded and they switch back. The Appalachian Trail is generally up and it's down the other side.
In
It's more
that
difficult.
in that hike that you did, with respect to the elevation gains, you probably had some pretty significant elevation gains in probably the northern states, I presume. But how did you compare the two? The more flatter states, were you more concerned about terrain, weather, ticks, snakes? What else did
E,
you do?
E, E, all of the above. Well, to be honest, the treadway was as much of a determinant of your pace as was the elevation gain or loss. Because of course, going up, you would go slower, down, you'd be going a little faster. But it depends on the treadway. You know, if the treadway was reasonably decent, you could go about 3 miles an hour. If it was rocks and roots, which again, so much of it was, and especially if it's wet, you have to be that much more careful. You may be going 1 mile an hour or a mile and a half an hour, two at the most. So in terms of pace, it depends on the treadway in addition to the
Sure.
elevation gain and loss. Yeah.
What was your
Um,
fear
well, the biggest,
or surprise?
I would think, well, in terms of, if you may be alluding to just things that may be dangerous backpacking, I think the biggest danger, frankly, is hypothermia.
Okay,
Because again, especially if you're wet, and especially on the East Coast and not as much here in the Ozarks, but on the Appalachian Trail, when you get above 3,000, 4,000 feet, then, it can get really cold, even in the summer. So you have to be really prepared. So again, anybody who's interested in long distance backpacking, it's really behoove you to do a few shakedown backpacks, if you will, a few shakedown hikes where you test out your layered clothing and your gear to make sure it's going to keep you warm. So hypothermia is probably the biggest risk if you're wet and cold. So one big goal is to keep your sleeping system dry. So you want to keep that inside multiple
often
layers.
difficult at times, I assume.
Oh yeah, well yeah. So you have to, again, especially on the Appalachian Trail, you need to have either a pack cover or a waterproof cover goes over your pack, which is not really that effective, honestly, because it'll leak through seams if it's pouring down rain. But a trash compactor bag inside your backpack to put everything inside that. You just slide it down inside the tube of the backpack, and then you put all your stuff inside. But all your things that need to be dry, so particularly your sleeping bag, but also your change of dry clothing, uh, put in two more layers of waterproof packaging. So I use either Ziploc bags, but I usually mainly use what are called Dyneema Cuban fiber (DCF) material, which is material. It's kind of like sailcloth. It's what
Sure,
a lot of backpacks and tents are made out of. But those are very waterproof. And would put clothes and other items that needed to stay dry inside inside my trash compactor bag, inside my backpack, which was made out of Dyneema Cuban fiber also, in an attempt to keep everything dry. And that
sure.
usually works.
Did you face obstacles as far as people or circumstances that
Well,
kind of were
circumstances
surprising to you?
Well, circumstances mainly just weather, Neil, lightning. Like we don't want to be up on the top of a ridge if there's lightning anywhere in the distance. So you have to take precautions. If the two of us, we would hike, 50 feet apart or so in case one of us was struck or whatever. And then um, there's a crouching position you can assume if there's lightning really nearby that you squat down on the balls of your feet, squat down, uh, throw your trekking poles aside because most of them are made of aluminum. Anyway, so there's some precautions you can take there. Uh, but in terms of you know challenges, the weather was one. It was hail on us, snow on us. You have to be prepared for all kinds of weather. So that again doesn't mean people should be afraid of those things. You just have to prepare for those contingencies. So you don't have to overpack things and make your pack really heavy, because that's something we can touch on. Because weight is your enemy when you're backpacking. It gets things get magnified how heavy they are. So you don't need to pack for your fears, but you need to pack prudently so you're prepared for weather. So weather is probably the biggest challenge. Plus, you can get quite monotonous. If you're walking in the green tunnel hour after hour, you're in your own head. You can talk to I talked to my hiking buddy there on the Appalachian Trail for 2,200 miles, but sometimes you run out of topics to talk about
Sure,
in
sure.
a 10 or 11-hour day. So you can listen to podcasts like Up Creek with
Yeah,
Neil or other podcasts or music or whatever, just to break the monotony sometimes. But it does give you time for reflection and to think about how fortunate you are to be doing out what you're doing and
that's true.
just have
That's
these
true.
opportunities.
I'm curious, you came from a professional setting, and then when I think of going into the Appalachian, I think of the Burt Reynolds movie out in the outback. I'm thinking, oh my, who would you see? What would you see? You must have come across quite an array of different individuals, not only native to the areas which you went through, but also hikers along the way.
Yeah, and in fact, honestly, most of the people you see are hikers. You'll see locals within a mile or two of road crossings, but usually that's about it. And it goes through some national parks. We went through Great Smoky Mountain National, so we saw a lot of folks then, of course. But most of the people we saw actually were other hikers. But it is an interesting, eclectic group of people, because people are out there for all kind of different reasons,
Sure.
right? They have their own motivations. It may be, somebody who's been in a combat situation and struggling with PTSD. It may be, who knows? I mean, again, most of them were younger folks who were doing it just for fun and camaraderie. A lot of younger folks tend to form what are called tramilies, which is just a contraction of trail family. So they don't know each other before the hike, but then they'll meet up somewhere in the hike and then start hiking together as a group,
Huh.
anywhere from 3 to 10 people forming tramilies. So a
Interesting.
lot of them in it for that social aspect, but a lot of people just, I think, like you and I, just enjoy nature. They just enjoy being
Sure.
out there. And we met a lot of interesting folks, a lot of teachers actually in the summer who they had the summer off, were spending some time out there. Um, Met day hikers again near state or national parks or just near road crossings. So we met a real interesting cross section of people. Uh, but most of them were very bright, interesting, engaging young folks that we just really enjoyed visiting
And
with.
I'm sure you do have a lot of bonding there just because of the circumstance and the trek you're going through.
I think I certainly did with my hiking buddy because we already knew each other. We were friends, but when you're, I don't know, when you're shivering and miserable, wet together, and you have blisters and you're hungry, and
Sure.
whatever, just sharing those experiences tends to bring people together and make them bond. So yeah, we became better friends after this experience. Although, sometimes it's just like anybody that you're in close contact with. Sometimes you, I don't know, have unkind words for each other.
Sure.
But for the most part, it was very. I really loved having my hiking buddy along with that for that experience because you share that experience with somebody, right?
You bet.
You
You
share
bet.
it.
I assume you still stay in contact on a
I
thinking
do.
back
Yeah.
about that particular time. And when you think
Yeah.
over that 10 years, can you remember one year that just sticks out? This was the worst year or the best year?
2020 because we didn't get to go because of COVID,
Oh, okay, sure.
and then 2012. That was actually 2 years we didn't go out. And in 2012, I got pretty ill right before we were supposed to leave. So my hiking buddy was kind enough not to go, so we were still on the same sequence. So we actually missed those 2 years and
Okay,
completed it from 2010 to 2022. Those
gotcha.
12 years.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, transitioning, if you will, to the Pacific Crest Trail, which I'm more familiar with, I've hiked a few miles, not anything in relationship to what you've done, but it is a beautiful trail. And how would you compare the two?
Oh, that's a good question, and they're very different experiences. To me, again, doing my hiking in the Ozarks and the Appalachians, being on the Pacific Crest Trail was an eye opener in terms of just how wide open and expansive the landscape is. you have 360 views almost all the time because you're not in the green tunnel. Especially, and I've only done, it's only fair for me to comment. I've only done the first 600 miles of it from Campo on the Mexican border up to the western edge of the Mojave Desert there near, what's that town? Near Lancaster,
Okay, so how many
or
miles?
Tehachapi. Actually, I'm just south of Kennedy Meadows, if that means anything. It's near north of Tehachapi. But anyway, um,
600
it's
out
a
of how many miles?
there's 2,650,
Wow.
2,650. So it's a good bit longer than the Appalachian Trail, but it actually takes people about the same or a little less time to hike it because it's graded again. And the treadway is better. It's not all rocks and roots. There are some places you can actually walk with your head held up and look around and enjoy
Sure.
the views. So it's you'll do more miles in a day because again it's a not that you're not climbing. I mean the highest point on the PCT is about 13,100 feet. It's called Forester Pass,
Wow.
and the highest point on the Appalachian Trail is about 6,600 feet. And that's actually it's called Clingman's Dome, and that's in Great Smoky Mountain National Park. So you're actually doing more climbing on the PCT overall, but it's more gradual.
Okay.
So it's just not as hard on you, at least in my opinion. It's been hard on my body so far. And
Right.
once you get further north into Oregon and Washington, it's a lot more forested. So I suspect it'll be more like the Appalachian Trail, but the treadway is still better, still milder, if you will, not as rocky and rooty.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, you've seen as a physician, you've seen the results of inactivity, and yet you are going beyond the norm of hiking the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail. How can you relate to that to your patients, or how did you relate to your patients about seeing them in somewhat an inactive state, and yet them asking you about what are you doing this week or week to come?
That's a good question. And I did, even though my specialty was skin cancer, I had a pretty narrow
Sure.
little niche. Um, I tried to remember that I was a physician first, right, and a skin cancer guy second. And if people, I did try to counsel people on, smoking cessation, alcohol moderation, weight loss if it was appropriate. People were diabetic. I would ask them about their sugar control. I mean, I tried to take a more, at least I tried to take a more holistic approach like that. So if that ever came up, then I mean, as a part of my wellness spiel, I would always mention exercise and just ask people, what do you enjoy doing? Not it doesn't involve a screen, right? What
Right.
do you like to do? What do you like to do that's fun? And then say, great, amplify that, grow that, learn how to incorporate that more frequently in your daily routine. And not only will that bring you just more enjoyment and enrichment of life, it'll make you healthier. It'll give you more health span because these days we talk more about health span than lifespan, right?
Mhm, mhm.
How long you're healthy and well is more important probably than people who are maybe near end of life who just can't enjoy life, who have no quality
Sure.
of life left. So it does enhance. There's no question in my mind it enhances our enjoyment and enrichment of life if we're healthy and healthy to enjoy it, feel good. So I just encourage people to, you don't have to get into extreme things, right? You don't have to run marathons or whatever kind of uh, swim the English Channel, but it just get to start walking. If you enjoy walking, walk. If you enjoy gardening, gardening is physical exercise. It's just whatever people enjoy and look at as an activity to look forward to and not as a drudgery type of exercise. You can find that balance, get exercise while not recognizing that you're doing it. Like playing pickleball, right? It's an
Sure.
addiction you and I both share. That's a whole lot of fun. It's very social, and you don't realize it, but you get a lot of exercise, right? You're getting not just motion, but you're getting hand-eye coordination, quickness. It's training your body in a lot of ways to maintain health. So it's just a matter of finding what gives you joy and happiness.
It is, but I think you and my wife share something. It's in your DNA. It's about competition. And I chuckle at my wife every time I think about her because when we hike or we walk or we pick a ball or whatever we do, it's competition. It's just right up front. So she'll be walking along and we'll be walking with a group and she'll see people ahead of her and she goes, I just know her mind is thinking, I've got to pass that person. I got to get up there. So I, I assume, do you have that same competitive spirit when you see someone on that trail? Do you think, I'm going to pass that person?
I kind of had that way. I mean, yes, especially, um, if it was young guys,
Sure.
we were older. And so we thought, okay, well, we're going to catch those young guys. And of course, most of the time we didn't. But again, yeah, it's funny. I never really articulated that out loud, but you're absolutely right. If I saw somebody in a ridge ahead of me, well, I'm going to try to catch that person before dark, or I'm going to try to
Right.
catch that person
Right.
before I eat whatever, or just visit with that person, learn their story. What's their story? I love to
Sure.
talk to people. My wife probably gets mad at me for stopping talking all the time, but I just love to chat with people, learn their story. Why are you here? That sort of thing. But you're absolutely right. And then the same thing with my hiking buddy, because we would sometimes we get separated by whatever half a mile or whatever during the day. We always had a goal at the end of the day. We're going to meet at this mile or just wherever this place was. But I was faster, a little faster ascending than he was, but he was faster descending than I was. So sometimes we'd yo-yo, right? I'd
Interesting.
lose him on an ascent, and then on the descent he'd pass me.
Oh boy,
But it
yes.
all kind of evened out in the end. So
Well, I'm curious, as you as a medical professional, when you go into a group room, a group of people, or see a group of people, or maybe it's us down at our resort in California, do you kind of size people up and go look at that person and go, wow, I think they might make it a mile. They might make it 10 miles, but this one is not going to make it at all. Do you ever just kind of in your mind just
I,
size people up on their physical condition and what they could or could not do?
I guess, but maybe in the opposite way. Because again, I like to chit chat with people. So maybe I look for, I don't know, somebody maybe be interested in going hiking with us or joining us, my wife and I hike or whatever, going on I might be able to find some folks who are interested in doing a few overnighters on in California, if anybody's interested.
Sure.
So yeah, but not, I mean, I don't know. I guess I hadn't thought of them as not capable of doing it. I guess I was thinking about maybe that
What they
guy looks
could
like a
do.
runner. Maybe he'd like to backpack or whatever. That's
So
that sort of a thought.
what one thing did you find out about it yourself while hiking that you just thought, I did not know that? And did you face the wall or come up against the wall as athletes often say? They hit the wall. Do you remember that moment
Yeah,
you hit the wall and
yeah.
thought,
I mean,
where am I? What am I doing? Why am I
yeah.
doing this?
Well, I mean, it's hiking backpacking anyway, especially it's full of constant nuisances, right? Little nuisances like there are gnats in your ears and eyes all the time, or you're chafing because it poured down rain this morning and there's no sun to dry your clothes out. There's I don't know, there's sand in your shoe or rocks in your shoe, you got to stop and get out, or whatever. There's just constant little naggy things. You get slapped in the face with a briar or whatever. So to me, those challenges are as much mental. They're more mental to me than they were physical. Because if physical, and you hit the wall physically, you can stop, right? You can stop and you can rest and you can make yourself take a break. When the challenges are mental, it's harder to take a breath and say, you know what, I'm here by choice. This isn't I have chosen to come out here and do this. But for me anyway, it was harder to overcome those periods of mental stress or anxiety where I'm saying, I'm done with this. I whatever. My knee is hurting and I whatever sprained my thumb and I'm hungry and I'm wet and cold and to me that was harder to overcome honestly than the physical aspect of it.
Are you a better person for it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one thing I really did do, I think a lot of, again, it was get inside my own head. I was very introspective because again, you sort of have to be, you're with yourself. So I found myself reviewing my childhood, reviewing my high school experiences or college or my career. What have I done right? What could I have done better? Who do I wish I had maintained a relationship that I just let go um,
A
for
lot of
no good reason? And
self-assessment.
a lot of self-assessment, Neil. That's a good way of putting it. And I found that helpful because in my, and you know this, we all get busy, right? We're also busy in our lives and we're full of, 24-hour news cycle and screens on everything. And we lose track of just sitting down and taking a stock of our lives. And are we doing things right? What can we do better? So it gave me a lot of time for self-reflection or self-assessment, as you say, which I don't think I would have done had I not been out there for hours and hours by myself. So that's one good thing that came out of it, certainly. But it is, I mean, to me, it is something I just enjoy. I just love being out there. Like there's nothing like, being at altitude, whether you're on the AT or on the Pacific Crest Trail, and you look down the valley and there's clouds in the valley in the morning, and with the sun over the top of them, and it's the most exquisite, beautiful sunrises, and sunsets I've ever seen. I've actually been in Southern California, first 600 miles of the PCT, the most brilliant, beautiful color sunrises and sunsets. So that alone right there is worth the price of admission.
Sure.
Waking up in the morning and walking and seeing this beautiful splendor in front of you, it's just, to me, it never gets old. It never gets old.
Well, many people that have hiked great distances or accomplished great feats come to a sense of it's almost like a religion. It's you find yourself, you find the meaning of life, you find a sense of purpose. You really do not only a self-assessment, but you really say, where am I and why am I who I am? Did you come across those moments where you just kind of really
Yes.
ponder life itself?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The big picture questions, right? Like, why am I here?
Sure.
Who are we floating out in space? How did we get here? What is our purpose for being here? I mean, yeah, you have time to ponder these big questions that are difficult to answer, but are fun to ask and interesting to ask. So yeah, there's a lot of yeah, and as you say, not only self-assessment but just pondering the big questions. Yeah, and again, I just don't think I would, especially then when I was on the Appalachian Trail and just taking those 2 weeks. Such a busy part of life, right? Busy career, and I mean the kids are already out of the house, I guess, but still, you're just we're just busy and don't take the time. I don't think. And you know this, Neil. You've been at something about being out in nature, even if it's at the park 5 minutes from the house, or a state park, or if we're down at Orbs hiking around those beautiful areas there. Just being out in nature is so uplifting. Something about it just takes weight off my shoulders and makes me feel just thrilled that I'm alive. So it's
Mhm.
hard to articulate that sensation, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Just being out there is rejuvenating and just,
Everyone seems to have a way of trying to find that peace in their life and their moment, and they do it in various ways. Uh, Some people, hike. Some people walk. Some people
yeah,
meditate,
garden,
exercise,
knit, anything.
garden,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah,
You somewhat got
yes.
to find yourself. So if you were to look at a person, I hate to use myself because I'm such a magnificent form compared to you, but if you look at a person and think of, wow, that person's got it. He or she has physically got what it would take. But do they really have what it takes? Do they have the mental toughness? Do they have the drive? What does it take?
Yeah, I think that's a good point because there are some folks who clearly, I think most people have the physical ability to do it. If they'll, if you're a couch potato, then you can build up to walking, or you can build up through hiking. I think people can build up to the physical part. Um, whether you're ready to start right then or not. But I do think the mental part is more difficult. And I honestly didn't realize how difficult it was until I started doing it, multiple multi-day hikes. And again, it's more mental. You get so tired of being unbelievably smelly. You wouldn't believe how bad we smell. Maybe you do, but we smell, God, so bad. And you catch a whiff of other hikers and you think, oh my God, am I that bad? And then, yeah, you are.
That's nature at its
So,
worst.
oh my gosh, yeah. So just being dirty and smelly and tired and um, you do come to appreciate things that you take for granted, like water. Water is such a precious commodity. But when you're backpacking, especially out west, you never pass up easy water, right? You never pass up water. And when water is heavy, it weighs about 2.2 pounds per liter, not including the container you have it in. And if you have a 30-mile stretch of desert like you do in the Pacific Crest Trail, you might have to carry 6 liters of water. That's
Sure.
15 pounds right there. So anyway, those things they're weighing you. The whining about carrying the weight on your back, you have a blister on your foot, your Achilles heel, or whatever, the bugs, all of these things again, I found them in my personal experience more difficult than the physical challenge of walking up and down mountains carrying a backpack. That was more challenging to me.
So you've done the Appalachian Trail. You're a portion of the way through, quarter of the way through, if you will, the Pacific Crest Trail. Have you ever thought to yourself, what's one trail that's just too much that I couldn't do?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think my knees are going to be the determining factor. I've got about 3,300 miles of backpacking in on the
Wow.
Appalachian Trail, the two long trails in Arkansas, and the Pacific Crest Trail. Um, but as you may recall, I've had some knee injuries and knee surgery that have put a little bit of a tamp on my ability. In fact, the last time I went on the Pacific Crest Trail, I had to bail after 43 miles because my knee was just swelling up. So that I think that's probably what's going to dictate my miles. Frankly, is not my enjoyment and determination and will to continue backpacking, but I think it's knees.
If you
So
were a younger person or in better shape and knowing what you know now, is there a trail out there that you think that's the trail? That's the top of the heap.
well, in the U.S. anyway, there are the three big long distance trails. There's the Appalachian Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the Pacific Crest Trail. I think the most iconic, in part because of just fame and it's been around longer and popular media and Bill Bryson's book and so on, is the Appalachian Trail. So I'm really glad I did that. It was the most challenging of the. I think it is the most challenging of the three trails. So I'm glad I did that first. I wish I had started it 30 years before I did. But I don't know. I'd have to say I think the Pacific Crest has the most variability on it because again, the first 700 miles are in the desert, even though once at the elevation you have lots of pine trees and whatnot. It's drier, but once you get out of that first 700 miles, you're in the Sierras, where you have Kings Canyon National Park and Yosemite, and it goes through the ridge of the Sierra Nevada, which is unbelievably gorgeous. And then you get into the forests of Oregon and Washington, so it's the most diverse of the trails, I think, in terms of terrain and topography, and flora and fauna and altitude. I think the low point is on the gorge there at Columbia River. I think it's 110 feet at the Bridge of the Gods between Oregon and Washington State there. And the high point is in California near Mount Whitney. It's about 30, it's called Forester Pass. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a little over 13,000 feet. So it's got a huge
Sure.
change in altitude and flora and fauna that I think makes that, anyway, again, in my opinion, the most interesting of the trails because of the variety that you.
And you got to time yourself for those seasons to match.
Yes, that's the beauty of section hiking, Neil, is you can choose when you go. Like you can't go in the Sierras, before July, really, because the snowpack or the creeks are too high and too fast, too dangerous to pass. But even on the Appalachian Trail, for instance, you can hike Maine and New Hampshire in the summer, or wherever you choose. You can hike down further south when it's
Sure.
cooler in the early spring or fall. If you through hike, you're stuck with the seasons you have. But
Yeah.
most people on the Appalachian Trail start in early April. You have to finish by October 15th at Katahdin in Baxter State Park in Maine because it closes because of snow there. Tree line is below 4,000 feet once you're in New Hampshire and Maine, and so they get a lot of snow early. So you have to finish your hike if you're going to do a through hike by October 15th on the Appalachian Trail.
Did you ever consider any out of the country hikes that would entertain you? Large, long distance hikes?
Well, funny you mention that since Susan's on the Camino de Santiago, but yeah, I've kind of been talking that up for years with my wife to try to get her to join me. She likes to do day hikes. She's just not as much into sleeping outside, but that's one I would like to do at some point on my punch list. But there's also one in New Zealand that's supposed to be spectacular. It starts on the northern end of the North Island and goes all the way to the southern tip of the South Island. So
Wow.
I doubt I'll ever do that, but I've heard that's a spectacular about 3 month hike in terms of just scenery that's unbelievable.
It is, yes. That's beautiful. Wow. Well, you've done this sport. You've not completed it yet. You've got more to do. You've got more life to live. You've got more pickleball to play. But if you were to look at another sport and said, that's a sport that's a little bit tougher, what would that be?
Gosh, you mean something new to take up?
That you would
I tell you,
you would enjoy now that you know what you can do. You've physically done these things. You've kind of tested yourself. You know what your abilities are.
I still like to, I kind of fell out of cycling. I used to cycle a lot, long distance cycling a lot, and I fell out of that. So I kind of want to get back into that in part because it's less hard on my knees than jogging, which is what I do now. But you mentioned that golfing, it's not exactly an endurance sport, but it's hard. I know it's a really hard skill.
Mental
And
game.
oh, yeah, talk about a mental game. Yeah. More so than even the manly sport of pickleball. But I've always thought how difficult and challenging it must be because if you're bending over a few millimeters too far, or you're not bending over a few millimeters enough, you'll hit the dirt, you'll hit the top of the ball, and then you have acres of land and a small hole and a little tiny ball to hit it and a stick to hit it with. I mean, it just seems like a conceptually difficult game to me. So it's something I may honestly take up while we're back down at Outdoor Resort Palm Springs, just because I've never done it. In fact, my wife and I have talked about this, maybe trying it just because it's a challenge and we'll see if we enjoy it. I've
Um,
honestly been afraid to try it before because I was afraid I'd like it. I just didn't want to. It takes a lot of time. And anyway, are you a golfer, Neil? Have you tried
not
that?
very well. I choose my words carefully, but not very well.
Well, that's like,
So,
oh, well, look at the things we do. We're all not very good at them, right? I mean, we don't really play pickleball that great or tennis or, you know what I mean? But it's fun, right? So as long as it's fun.
well, you're a remarkable pickleball player. I have to say that I
Mm.
enjoy playing with you, and it's fun. But we do have a lot of fun with that as well. So, as you reflect on your hike and you think of the people you've met, and when you lace up your boots now, uh, what's the why that keeps you moving forward? What's the why?
The why is still, I think, the reason I got out there in the first place is because it's not old to me. I enjoy the challenge of a long endurance, and it doesn't have to be hard going hard, right? Just walking for a long time. I enjoy walking for a long time. and I enjoy being outside. So those two things keep me wanting to keep backpacking. I just enjoy the beauty, the scenery. I enjoy seeing wildlife. I enjoy waking up in the morning and looking at the beautiful sunrises. Enjoy watching the sunsets while I'm eating rehydrated beans, But but I just enjoy being out there. I enjoy it, and I enjoy reliving it when I look at the pictures later. I take a lot of pictures with my phone. I just have that type 2 fun where I kind of scroll through my pictures, and it makes me remember more detail than if I didn't take all the pictures. And I can kind of share that experience with my wife that way too, right? I can
So you
bore her
forget the
with
gnats in your
pictures.
ear or the
Exactly. No, that's exactly
blister on your
right.
foot.
You forget all the, absolutely, forget all of that. Forget the blisters and all the chafing and all the other, the cold, rehydrated, god awful dehydrated beans and peanuts and raisins and all the other things you eat. But yeah, it makes it all, to me, it's still fun. I still enjoy it. I'll do it as long as my knees hold out.
That's great. So, as our listeners will listen to this at some juncture, I'm sure many are thinking, well, am I too old?
I'm sure
What
many are asleep after listening to me, but
what do you think you would say to that person thinking, it's just my time's passed?
I don't know. Again, it's just like my spiel to when seeing patients is, it doesn't matter how long you've been sedentary. As long as you don't try to jump in and go 90 miles an hour to start with. Start slow and work your way up. I think anybody can hike. I mean, it's walking. It just boils down to walking. Now, one thing I will say for older hikers, trekking poles are an essential. Uh, Trekking poles, once you start using them, you'll never go back to not using them. They help with balance, and they really help you with fall prevention. You can catch yourself from falling. And if you're climbing or descending, it just, again, helps you with better footing. Even if you're on a level, flat surface, poling in concert with your steps, it takes some of the weight off your knees, hips, and ankles. And it puts some of that burden on your triceps, on your upper body. So, starting slow and knowing your limits, not trying for a 20-mile day your first day in elevation with a 2,000 or 3,000 foot elevation gain. Trekking poles, staying hydrated, staying fed or fueled, if you want to look at it that way. And then not packing for your fears. In other words, not carrying 50 pounds of unnecessary gear, but just packing prudently with items that you might need. So you can't forget your medication. If you want to sleep at night, you can't forget earplugs. I mean, it's such a simple thing, but silicone earplugs, you'll sleep so much better. You won't hear every little broken twig and think it's a bear coming at you and all that. So there are a number of little things that older hikers can do. I really recommend trail runner shoes as opposed to hiking boots or hiking shoes.
Interesting.
Hiking shoes are sort of a hybrid. They're low cut, but they're very hard sole and often have a hard plastic or metal plate in the toe box to help against rock bruises and things. But they're heavy, very heavy. They tend to stay wet a long time. Nothing's worse than wet shoes, wet, cold shoes.
Interesting.
So trail runners that are not waterproof, canvas, so much more comfortable. And you can have a lot less foot problems with blisters and friction and things. So anyway, those are a few things that older hikers can do. But I would encourage, if anybody's interested, yeah, start small. Go for a walk in your neighborhood and then go for a walk on a local trail. Most people live near where there's a nature trail or park. And then if you find that you enjoy it, you build up from there. But I would definitely recommend for older hikers to wear, to use hiking poles or trekking poles and to wear comfortable trail running shoes
What's the
rather than
verdict
hiking
on
boots.
the breathability of fabrics and the um, the waterproofness of a material? Does it keep everything in, and do you kind of sweat in your own sweat, if you will, or do you let it breathe and let it breathe out?
That's a good question. And breathable, waterproof fabrics have been developed by most of the major companies that supply backpackers and
Gore-Tex
hikers.
is it run its course?
Gore-Tex is a classic example, but the reality of it is um, they'll wet out. So if you're in light rain, intermittent rain in a drier climate, like if you're on the West Coast where we are in California, it's not a problem. On the Appalachian Trail, to me, the waterproof breathable was a fantasy because I tried multiple kinds over the years and they all wetted out. I mean, after a while, after the constant rain, they will soak through. Now you can get silicone coated nylon. It's called Sil Nylon, which is completely waterproof. But like you mentioned, Neil, you sweat so profusely in there, even when it's colder, you'll get just as drenched inside. So some of the higher end ones have pit zips that you can unzip and things, but still, there's not a good solution. Really, the best solution, if you're not on a really long trek, is an umbrella. That way you don't sweat profusely. Um, the problem when you're hiking on a place like the Appalachian Trail in the Ozarks is you're constantly going under limbs and branches, and it's not real practical. Umbrellas are actually more practical on the Pacific Crest Trail to protect you from the sun. Um, so there's not a good solution. I will say instead of rain pants, though, rain kilts or rain skirts are so much more comfortable because they breathe. They're just a piece of usually Dyneema cumin fiber that wraps around your waist and you wear them like a skirt. So they ventilated underneath.
So
So
will
those are
we
much
see
more
you
comfortable.
wearing a kilt this year when you play pickleball?
It's possible I could do. I'm afraid that, um, well,
I can only
I don't know how
imagine you would have
comfortable.
killed.
Yeah, they can't. Yeah, I'd have to I find one that was plaid if I was going to do that.
Well, your tartan is very important. Well, as I would have to ask you to summarize, if you could, your philosophy of retirement in hiking in one trail tested sentence, what would that be? Your philosophy of retirement in one
Well,
trail tested sentence, what would that be?
rail tested sentence. Well, my philosophy with retirement was in general, you have to retire to something, not just from something, or you won't feel you have to have a sense of purpose.
Transition.
So, right, transition from one purpose, your career, to another purpose. And that purpose can be whatever brings you joy and happiness and meaning in life. Um, but I'm having trouble honestly tying that to a trail lingo. Um, Actually, I know it's good. Hike your own hike. That's a backpacking lingo. Hike your own hike, which means you don't need to worry about what other pace people are hiking. You don't need to worry about what kind of gear they're carrying. You don't need to worry about anything they're doing. You hike your own hike. So that's probably, I guess, relatable. Just retire your own retirement. What brings you meaning in life, what brings you joy, and what again gives you a sense of purpose. What makes you want to get up in the morning? Because I think we all have that in our careers, and especially as in the States, it seems like more than other cultures, we so identify ourselves so much with what do you do for a living? What do you do to put food on the table? It's often something first thing you ask a stranger. In other cultures, it's just not that way. It's tell me about yourself. What gives you purpose? And so it is a hard transition, I think, for a lot of people in any culture to retire, right? Because that's your career. That was your life for so many years, decades, and now it's not. So if you don't find something to fill that time meaningfully, that's I think it would lead to just unhappiness or unsatisfaction with your life. Hike your own hike.
Excellent. Well, there you have it. Dr. Kevin St. Clair on one of the two biggest hikes in the nation. And you said it well, you live life well. you've got a lot of life left to live, and hopefully you'll help others live that life. So with that, we'll see you on the trail. Thanks again, Kevin. I appreciate this time. I really do.
Thank
You've
you.
been a great,
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. I so enjoyed the talk.
great.